his points are fair. He said if Conservative would have done what they said they was going to do, he wouldn't have had to defect to UKIP. You know, I actually agree with him.
I would vote for him because he's now gone to UKIP for the plain fact that it's a big step forward, and I think he's going to help us positively all the way through for the next few years.
Well, Mark Reckless is live for us in Strood. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Reckless. You heard in our report that you've been accused of lying about your intentions, of misleading your constituents. We heard some of the feelings of them there. How can they trust you to be a good MP after all of this?
Well, because I'm having a by-election. I think that is the really crucial point. I mean, listening to some of the ladies in your clip just then, I rather agree with the sense of what they're saying. But I think it only really applies when you have an MP, and this has almost always been the case before, who switches party and then insists on continuing to represent the same constituents in a different party and doesn't give them a say. And I would totally understand why people would be angry in that circumstance. But people who voted for me, I believe many people voted for me because of my record and some of the campaigns I fought on, but certainly some people locally voted for me just because I had a Conservative label, and that's why it's really important that I have a by-election, so I'm honest with my electorate, and so they get to decide what type of person is representing them, and then they can look at my record, look at what I say. Do they want to support me as UKIP, or do they just prefer to vote for someone who's got a Conservative label, and it will be the electorate's choice, not mine.
Well, talking about being honest to your constituents, when exactly did you start speaking to UKIP? How long have you been saying you're going to honour your commitments to the Conservatives whilst having talks with UKIP members?
Well, you can never discuss these things in advance. I mean, the slightest whiff to the sort of Conservatives that, you know, I was thinking of joining UKIP, all the negative attacks and all the bile you've seen them releasing over the last day or two, that would have happened back then. And rather than me explaining the positive reasons of why I wanted to join UKIP to keep my promises, you'd have seen some of the negative attacks we've seen over the last day or two. And I really want to fight a positive campaign and focus on the local issues. And that's why I'm out here campaigning in Strood, because the big issue has been traffic congestion. A lot of people complaining it's taken an hour, 2 hours just to get to work queuing in Strood. We've got a bus lane down there, cost 13 million to build, hardly any buses use it. I'm campaigning, asking the Secretary of State, Eric Pickles, let's open it up to traffic so people can get to work, spend more time productively or with their families. For some reason, Medway Council and the government, they're arguing with each other. They won't do it. I hope they will now, because it's 13 million of taxpayers' money, and there's congestion in Strood, and people desperately need to get to work.
Let's just go back to some of the things you've been talking about up until this point, though. You're a die-hard Eurosceptic. You made it clear that Europe was one of the key issues in your decision to defect. However, only last month, you argued that only the Conservatives could offer an in-out referendum on Europe. Were you mistaken? Were you not telling the truth?
Well, the Conservatives are offering a referendum, but my concern is it won't be a fair, straight, in-out referendum that I want. And the reason for that is the Prime Minister is going to pretend to renegotiate our membership of the EU. Just like Harold Wilson did in 1975, he'll come back and the others will work with him, and they'll say, oh, well, things have changed, it's all going to be much better in the future, I've got this, we're going to do that, and you may not have liked the EU in the past, but I've renegotiated and it's good for Britain, and you should vote to stay in. People won't actually know if that's true at the time, but he hopes he can fool enough of the people for a small period of time to win that vote, and we will not have another vote for a generation. So we need that vote to be on fair terms, and we saw in Scotland how important it is for fair terms, and it must be that we get that straight in-out referendum so people can vote for an independent Britain.
And just on another point, in terms of the impression that you're giving people and giving a fair impression, UKIP has always been proud to boast that it's this anti-establishment party. You've been the face of the establishment for 4 years. The more MPs that defect, the less UKIP can claim that, can't they?
Well, I don't know how long it takes to become part of the establishment. I mean, I fought my seat here in Rochester and Strood. It was previously called the Medway seat, 2001 and 2005. For 9, 10 years, I tramped the streets here campaigning. It's often not not glamorous work. And then for 4 years, I did have the chance as an MP, I'd previously been a councillor for a while, to represent people. And I've always tried to do that, to represent their interests, to try and get local issues solved, and to try and keep the promises I make at election time. I don't want to be part of the establishment. I think people are fed up with Westminster politics. They want politicians who keep their word. I didn't feel I could keep the promises that I made along with other Conservatives, and that's why I joined UKIP, so I can keep my promises to voters here and across the country, is what UKIP wants to do.
Mark Reckless, thank you.